Just when I thought Karen and her HOA antics had reached the peak of absurdity, she somehow found a new way to escalate her nonsense. I had spent weeks building a proper fence around my ranch house, tall, sturdy, and elegant with reinforced gates, mainly to keep my livestock in and unwanted guests out, but apparently Karen interpreted it as a personal challenge to her ego. The morning after I finished sealing off the property, I see a bright red SUV barreling up the driveway, followed by two board members waving clipboards and shouting instructions like they were storming Normandy. Karen leaps out, hair frazzled, lipstick smeared from some sort of frantic morning ritual, and immediately starts yelling about unauthorized construction and violations of HOA regulations. Even though this is private land, fully permitted, and built entirely at my expense, I calmly walk out to greet her, leaning on a shovel for dramatic effect, and she shouts, "You can't just fence yourself in. You're violating community aesthetics and obstructing access for emergency services." I blink at her and say, "Lady, first, you don't get to define aesthetics on my land. Second, my fence is fully compliant with all local building codes. Third, if anyone needs access, I have a gate code I can share, or not." Her face contorts like I just insulted her entire family tree. She pulls out her phone mid-scream and starts dialing 911, shrieking into it about illegal enclosure and imminent hazard, while my goats and cows watch from the sidelines like they're judges in some courtroom drama. Within minutes, two sheriff vehicles arrive, lights flashing, because apparently Karen actually convinced the dispatcher that a fence equals public endangerment. She's waving her arms like a deranged conductor, trying to convince the deputies that I've committed some kind of felony. The officer steps out, takes one look at the fence, then at me calmly holding a cup of coffee, and asks Karen for documentation. She stammers, I don't need documentation. The HOA has authority." The officer blinks and says, "This is private property. She's not violating any law. You're trespassing." Karen's jaw drops. She tries to argue further, pointing wildly at the fence, and accidentally trips over a patch of dirt, landing face first in the mulch. I can't help but stifle a laugh as the officer asks her to step aside. I walk over to the gate, enter my code, and calmly lock it behind her, explaining that the property is now completely secure and that any further trespassing will be treated as criminal. She shrieks, "I will take legal action." I smile and remind her that the first court appearance for trespassing already comes with mandatory community service, which she's about to rack up quickly. The HOA board members are cowering behind her, muttering apologies as the officer explains the difference between private property rights and imaginary HOA authority. Over the next week, Karen is cited for multiple trespassing violations, false reporting, and harassment. Word spreads fast, and now every HOA volunteer approaches the property with extreme caution, checking and rechecking maps, property deeds, and even weather forecasts to make sure they don't accidentally breathe on my land. Meanwhile, I upgrade the fence with additional locks, motion sensors, and small warning lights that flash whenever anyone approaches, just for dramatic flair. The goats patrol the perimeter like fluffy sentries, and the cows lounge majestically inside the fenced area, occasionally giving Karen a disdainful glance if she dares to drive past. Karen, naturally, tries to posture from the street, yelling through a megaphone about HOA rules and community standards, only to realize that the fence completely blocks her, and every word she says bounces back at her like a comedic echo. I sit on my porch with iced tea, watching her flail, and think about the sheer absurdity of it all. A woman calling 911 because someone built a fence on their own property. The sheriff even jokes later that Karen might want to consider a hobby that doesn't involve harassing ranch owners with fences. While I sip my drink, listening to the animals and enjoying the quiet knowledge that the house is fully sealed, secure, and legally untouchable. And every time Karen drives by now, she slams on the brakes, rolls up her windows, and mutters darkly about fences that imprison the spirit. While I wave, smile, and think, sometimes the best defense is a good fence, and knowing how to call the sheriff.